Hi Primary 6s and Primary 7s, Mrs Allen here. Today, Thursday the 11th, we are going to be looking at grammar, direct and indirect speech. The differences between direct and indirect speech. Our aim by the end of this lesson is to be able to explain the differences between direct and indirect speech. We will know we have been successful in this if we can identify direct and indirect speech in writing, if we can recognise where inverted commas are needed to punctuate direct speech, if we can change direct speech into indirect speech and the other way around, indirect speech into direct speech, and if we can create examples of direct and indirect speech. Using speech within writing. Within writing, there are two ways to narrate the words spoken by a character. These are called direct speech or indirect, sometimes known as reported speech. I bid you farewell, earthlings. In a direct speech sentence, we would narrate Iggy's spoken words like this. We would open our inverted commas, I bid you farewell, earthlings, add our punctuation, which in this case is an exclamation mark, and then close our inverted commas, and explain how these words were spoken. So in this case, shouted Iggy from his spaceship. If we were writing an indirect speech sentence, we would narrate Iggy's spoken words like this. From his spaceship, Iggy bid farewell to the earthlings. Using direct speech. Let's look carefully at the direct speech sentence. What do you notice? I bid you farewell, shouted Iggy from his spaceship. The exact words of the speaker are enclosed in inverted commas, also known as speech marks. Indirect speech, the words of the speaker are quoted with no change to their content or order. The correct punctuation is used before the inverted commas close. And there is often a reporting clause to explain who said the speech. Sometimes the reporting clause can be extended with an adverb, subordinate clause, or prepositional phrase to explain more about how, where, or when the speech was said. The reporting clause can appear before or after the spoken words themselves. Using indirect speech. Now let's look at an indirect or reported speech sentence. How is it different to direct speech sentence? From his spaceship, Iggy bid farewell to the earthlings. In indirect speech, no inverted commas or speech marks are used. The actual words of the speaker are often changed. The spoken words need to be in the correct tense. Extra words may need to be added and pronouns may need to be changed. For example, I becomes Iggy. There are no reporting clauses within indirect speech. However, an adverb or prepositional phrase to explain more about how, where or when the speech was said can be added if needed. Are inverted commas needed? Look at these speech sentences. Are they examples of direct or indirect speech? If they are examples of direct speech, where should we place the inverted commas? Kayla explained that she used to live in New York. Is this direct or indirect? This is an example of indirect speech and does not need inverted commas. The sentence is reporting what Kayla explained. Are inverted commas needed? Look at these speech sentences. Are they examples of direct or indirect speech? If they are examples of direct speech, where should we place the inverted commas? Watch out, screamed George as he launched the frisbee. This is an example of direct speech and does need inverted commas around the spoken words. Where should they go? Around watch and out, making sure that the speech marks are closed after the exclamation mark. Look at these speech sentences. Are they examples of direct or indirect speech? If they're examples of direct speeches, where should we place the inverted commas? Guthrum announced that they should charge towards the village. This is an example of indirect speech and does not need inverted commas. The sentence is reporting what Guthrum said or announced. Are inverted commas needed? Look at these speech sentences. Are they examples of indirect or direct speech? If they're examples of direct speech, where should we place the inverted commas? The doctor gently said, "Open your mouth as wide as possible." This is an example of direct speech and does need inverted commas around the spoken words. Where should they go? Open your mouth as wide as possible. The speech mark should begin before the word open and end after the full stop after possible. Spotting direct and indirect speech. Can you spot an example of direct speech in this newspaper report? Here is a passage of direct speech. It has inverted commas, other speech punctuation, and a reporting clause. Can you spot an example of indirect speech in this newspaper report? Here is a passage of indirect speech. It has no inverted commas or reporting clause. It tells the reader what Justin Gatlin promised his supporters. Changing indirect speech to direct speech. Do you remember this indirect speech sentence from earlier? Could you turn it into an indirect speech sentence? Guthrum announced that they should charge towards the village. We should charge towards the village, announced Guthrum. Remember that you would open your speech marks before we, add your punctuation after village before closing your speech marks, and suggesting how Guthrum would have said it. What has changed and why? Changing direct speech to indirect speech. So now can you do the opposite? Could you turn this direct speech sentence from earlier into a line of indirect speech? The doctor gently said, "Open your mouth as wide as possible." The doctor gently told the patient that he should open his mouth as wide as possible. What has changed and why? Writing direct and indirect speech sentences. Look at this photograph. Can you invent both a direct and indirect speech sentence based upon it? Example sentences. Direct speech. "I want an ice cream," shouted the angry little boy. Remember, this is direct speech, so the inverted commas begin before the I and finish after the exclamation point after the cream. Indirect speech. The angry little boy shouted that he wanted an ice cream. Look at this photograph. Can you invent both a direct and indirect speech sentence based upon it? Examples. Direct speech. The championship driver shrieked, "We won the race." Indirect speech. The championship driver shrieked that they had won the race. Again, look at this photograph. Can you invent both a direct and indirect speech sentence based upon it? For direct speech, "Say cheese, Dad," pleaded the girl as she was taking the photograph. An example for indirect could be, as she was taking the photograph, the girl pleaded for her dad to say cheese. Now is your work that you will have to complete. If you are working on mild level, you will be working on Book 4, Unit 14. This shows you the page you will be working on. Please read the instructions in the dark blue section at the top and then answer the questions that follow. If you are working on medium or hot, you are working on Book 5, Unit 7. Again, the instruction book in darker green is there to help you. Please read through it and then answer the questions that follow. And finally, if you are working at spicy level, look at the instructions in both of the orange boxes. These are there as a guide to help you in what you are learning. Answer the questions and then submit all your answers to your teacher.